First of the month. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This morning I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K special episode Our Chains Are Broken, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, I am still sick. I still have a lingering cough in my throat, so yeah, I'm still going to be coughing here or there, but at least I don't have a headache. I don't have blocked nose. I feel far more better than last week. So yes, it's good to be back. Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K special episode. I did react to this special episode last week. However, I had to delete that video because the audio and the video were not in sync. I don't know what was going on with OBS when I was recording that video, but it just didn't work out properly and I had to delete it. So I'm back here again reacting to this special episode. If you guys want to watch my reaction, welcome, you can stay. But if you guys want to watch episode 40 when it comes out, then I'll meet you guys there for the next episode of Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K. But before I start with my reaction take 2, let's discuss what happened in episode 39 with the Death of Defiance. The Death of Defiance truly was a formidable, powerful vessel that the Imperium of Man had in their possession. It had a very powerful fusion cannon that could destroy entire fleets and even crack a planet if needs be. This vessel truly was a monster on the battlefield, and it even took down at least one Mandator 2 Dreadnought. It was about to take out the last Mandator 2 Dreadnought, the Pillar of Order. However, the Jedi Master, what was his name again, is Plo Koon, as well as some clones, decided that they were going to try and take out this vessel's primary weapon. However, the clones sabotaged the Jedi Master, Plo Koon, from completing his task, and they decided to pay the ultimate sacrifice by destroying the fusion cannon. However, the Death of Defiance is still an operational vessel. Yes, it's defanged. It's not as devastating as it used to be, but it is still very much effective on the battlefield. It can still be used in ways that maybe were not really designed for this vessel. In terms of like a battery ram, or a vessel that can soak up the enemy's fire and give cover to the rest of the fleet. It can still be used in an operational battle. And yeah, the Death of Defiance will live to fight another day. Admiral Roller has decided to regroup her forces because she sees a potential threat to the Imperium of Man fleet, and in doing so she's also lost some escort vessels here and there, but nothing to battleship class level just yet. So she has decided to regroup her forces to withstand another assault from the Galactic Republic fleet, because the Oracle team is now heading into phase 2 of their plans, and Admiral Roller can see that, and that's why she's decided to regroup her forces. Admiral Roller also wanted to continue her attacks on the Pillar of Order, the last Mandator 2 Dreadnought, with her Psyker, with her Astropathic Psyker choir, screaming, and that type of psychic attack would disrupt the crew members aboard the Pillar of Order. However, the captain of the Pillar of Order decided to bring droids onto the CIC to fix any types of components or operational stations that require repair from an engineer, because if it were any other organic being aboard or on the CIC, and they were repairing these systems, they would go mad. They would start killing each other. They would start killing other crew members. So the droids really helped out because they are not organic. They are synthetic in life, and the psychic attacks don't affect them. So I also suspected that in the future we might actually see droids taking command of vessels, and them being the captains and the helmsmen of the vessels, and taking command of these ships into battle. It's possible, it can happen, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the continuation of the battle between the Imperium of Man and the Galactic Republic. But yeah, all in all, it was just a very big, hectic battle between these two forces, and the Imperium of Man showed one of their most powerful cards on the field, and that was the Death of Defiance. Sorry, I almost said the Pill of Order, but the Death of Defiance. And that vessel, it's unfortunate that it's lost its primary weapon, but yeah, it can still be useful on the battlefield, and we'll see it again, maybe. Yeah. Okay, let us continue with the special episode. Now, in this special episode, a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people are going to die in very sad and disturbing ways. You won't forget it. You won't forget how these people died. Really. The tenfold path, the five-fingered hand. This heretic, this arch heretic, I don't know why Tarweiler decided to keep this man aboard his vessel. Someone so dangerous. I don't understand. He should have been killed from the get-go. But anyways, I'm going ahead of myself here. Let's start. Oof. 3, 2, 1, go.
Gorbin yawned, and Leandry, whose gaze was drawn by the noise, seemed to blanch and look about nervously. Gorbin had found that rather amusing during his first few days of working with the young man, but even he had to admit that the other guard's sensitivity was quickly transforming into a bothersome trait. "Aye, would you stop glancing around like Wyler's gonna come out of the walls? Give it a rest," the man said, voice
Anything is possible with Tarweiler. Anything.
gruff and tired. "But Gorbin, you heard what the Inquisitor said about yawning while on duty," said his pale, clean-faced counterpart, tightly clutching and raising his meltagun. Gorbin snapped out an armor-encased hand, grabbing Leandry's gun and pulling it back down so that the barrel pointed straight ahead. This time, Gorbin was the one that grimaced, though he didn't bother looking around to see if the Inquisitor was about to walk in. "And you know what he does to anyone who aims these things where they ought not be aimed," Gorbin shot back, his own meltagun still aimed firmly forward. Leandry blushed and nodded, gripping his weapon tighter and orienting it on the prisoner. Gorbin sighed and shook his head. "I've been serving under the Wylers for 60 years, boy. Worst thing Tar'll do to me is make me guard the throne-damned Shadow Pirate for another rotation."
Gorbin has been serving the Wylers for almost 70 years. meaning the Weilers are a family. It's not just Taweiler, there's more Weilers out there. How many of them are in the Star Wars galaxy with Taweiler? Or is it just Taweiler?
I'm used to that damn devil already, so I'll yawn when I damn well please, Gorbin said. The Shadow Pirate? The one we don't include in the block purges? Leandry asked. Gorbin nodded his head, the chin guard on his helmet clacking against the ceramite of his chest plate, his face scrunched in discomfort at the memory. We ain't got any others on board, do we? The man asked sarcastically. No, I guess not. But what makes that a punishment? I mean, compared to guarding the Heresiart, the younger man began to say. Guarding this brick is as easy as it comes, said Gorbin, his scoff making the other guard jump a bit and then stare forward at their prisoner's constraints.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been easy up until now. Up until now.
Compared to the pirate, this is a fecking vacation. Only thing I don't like about this rotation is how dull it gets. And how much my arms hurt after aiming this damned gun for a few hours. Besides, this brick on a stick won't last. Any minute now, Weiler will confirm the block purge, and that will be that. There was a silence then.
That will be that.
Silence Gorbin relished as he stared into the empty eyes of the sarcophagus that held the arch-heretic, bored as a plank in an unused room, and thankful for it. The massive cylinder before him looked almost like an enormous thermos, with a skeletal face on the cap. And within the nearly 2 feet of armored bulk within was the psyker they were guarding. Had been guarding for almost 2 months. Hey, Gorbin, said Leandry. Was the older man's tired response. What makes the Shadow Pirate such a bad rotation? I've never been in with it before, the younger man asked. The old blank sighed heavily, just the memories of those moments acting like a soft, barbed wire over the lens of his mind's eye.
This Shadow Pirate, is it some sort of demon? Or is it like a Drukhari Eldar, maybe? I'm just wondering.
Damned thing has a drill for a tongue. Buzz your ear off the entire time. Even with the mask, thrown damned thing can still get into your head if you stay with it long enough. Yap, 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 and then suddenly, it's trying to tell you things about yourself. Things you either know are true, or don't want to be true. It's probably the reason why Weiler never puts you on that rotation. The guard said. What do you mean? Asked Leandry, straightening somewhat and stiffening his face. Gorbin rolled his eyes. He knew his kind had a way of getting under other people's skin, and he also knew that, out of the 8 men he shared this rotation with, Leandry was the most potent blank by far. Gorbin could give men headaches with a handshake, could cause mild discomfort for people within the same room as him without even talking. Leandry could cause women to miscarriage with a slap, and could make an entire ballroom of blunts feel cold and sick. The Inquisitor himself could barely stand to be near him for any time at all. And yet, Gorbin still felt that more than half of Leandry's off-putting nature had to come from how irritating he was in general. There was nothing quite as wasteful and annoying as a man with too much to prove. The bearded man sighed again, even more heavily and pointedly. Look, kid, you're what, 28? The man asked. Leandry blushed and nodded his head quickly in a way that made Gorbin's eyes roll. He was almost certainly younger than that.
Gorbin with his eyes rolling all the time. Oh my gosh.
You ain't proved enough to yourself yet. Unlike you, I wasn't born in a place like this. I came from the underhive of Pecanus Secundus, and I'd lived a fair bit of my life before I ever, signed on with the Weilers. You've barely seen outside of this ship, barely done anything with yourself at all. Patience, lad. You'll be tested and tried eventually, And when you finally have some proper life under your belt, then I'm sure you'll get assigned to all the worst details, just like me," Gorbin said with obvious false joy. His fellow guard beamed at the thought, and Gorbin groaned internally, barely keeping himself from cringing. It seemed more and more that Wyler didn't breed them tough or smart, but he did apparently ensure that every one of the misbegotten blank children that fell into his care were brought up loyal, if not inanely stupid. "Oh, do you feel that? I think the Inquisitor is back," Leandry said suddenly, excitement entering his voice.
Yeah, no, it's not him.
"Right, it's about time." The older blank sighed out, straightening and tightening his grip on his melt-a-gun while glancing to the left towards the door that led into the cell. "Try not to embarrass me this time. Whoa, boy, your nose!" Gorbin suddenly blurted as the edge of his eye caught the sight of Leandry's face. The younger blank had a stream of red blood rolling down from one of his nostrils, deep crimson sliding across pale, hairless skin and trembling lips. "Boy, Leandry, the hell's wrong with you?" he began to say before suddenly he felt it too. A powerful pressure. At first, he recognized the sensation.
I'm wondering, during this time where Leandry and Gorbin are feeling this type of pressure, is it during the time when Anakin is, summoning the monsters from Iskandar's card deck? Is it during that time? Or when they were escaping their incarceration? Yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Wylers were psychers, and Tar was the strongest of them all, ranking in at an absurdly high psi rating. He was one of the few natural psychers Gorbin had ever met who had the power to push back on the blank aura that he and the others like him emitted. But it rapidly climbed beyond anything he had been subjected to before, and soon it became obvious to the older blank that this was not the approaching presence of their powerful employer. A second stream of red blood began to run down from Leandry's other nostril, the young man's whitening face stark against the color, his breath shuddering, gasping in controlled spurts, as though he were being constricted, even choked by something invisible. Gorbin's gun began to shake, but he did not veer it away from the prisoner, though he was now looking over at Leandry completely. "Snap out of it, boy! You're a bigger blank than I am! What's happening to you? Is it the Heresiarch? Is he doing it?" He bellowed. Then he felt heat on his own lip, and reached up with his gauntleted hand, touching just under his nose and drawing away red-coated digits. Fear and adrenaline pumped into Gorbin's body like venom from a snakebite, and he turned a furious face forward, glaring at the grinning skull face of the ceramite sarcophagus. "Ain't getting me, you throne-damned heretic!" He roared, squeezing the trigger of his melt-a-gun and firing a discharge of draconic starfire.
I think about the melt-a-gun like that plasma gun in The Matrix. I don't know if you guys remember that plasma gun that humans use against sentinels. And when they fire the plasma gun, it fires like this plasma electrical arc kind of thing at the sentinels, and it also makes like fireworks types of sound once you fire the weapon. Yeah, I'm thinking of the melter gun like that. It fires this large amount of energy, this large amount of plasma at the enemy, and it also makes that fireworks type of noise once you fire it. Yeah, I could be wrong. Maybe it sounds like a volcano erupting or something. Okay.
The powerful fusion reaction of his weapon pouring over the encasement which held the high criminal. It briefly began to glow red before beginning to liquefy, thermite peeling and flaking away as the metal components simply melted, spilling like silver guts and spattering onto the foot of the cell in a spreading molten slick.
our chains are broken.
But even then, the seasoned blank could tell that something was off. The flames splayed oddly, fountaining away into either side of the melting prison, the normally even streams of screaming fusion reactions fanning out like the wings of some forlorn, star-birthed phoenix. Gorbin was transfixed by the effect, gawking at the impossibility of it. Nothing, not a single thing in his entire long life had managed to have this kind of effect on his melt-a-gun. Nothing could split starfire like that. Nothing could defy the ruthless death he had grown so accustomed to wielding. But truth was ruthless itself, and it callously denied his experience, revealing that, for all those times previous, Gorbin had been shielded, sheltered from what now emerged before him, just as impossible as any effect that might occur to his stream of fire, and yet just as present.
Yeah, well, we have our time in the sun, and then the sun sets. Our time is coming to an end. Oh, Gorbin, you should have killed yourself.
Just as real. His bubble of anti-psyker aura was being pushed back, compressed against him, a single flickering spot of absolute cold attempting to resist the maelstrom of an unseen explosion of power. Where before, the spread of his blank nature would have enforced the cold laws of reality, now he watched in belligerent disbelief as that Aegis was defied and ravaged. Pain growing, spreading across his brain and spine as though a crushing pressure were being pushed into his bones directly. The force of it was so great, so distracting, they had nearly cooked his hands entirely by the time he realized his weapon was too hot to keep hold of. The blank screamed as he dropped the weapon, hands opening, smoking through his gauntlets, fingers twitching at the blind ruination he had forced onto them. But the searing pain in his palms was soon dwarfed by the growing tension that constricted his body and mind, like the unseen coils of some merciless serpent, squeezing his very soul. What was it? What was it? In an attempt to answer his own internal question, his eyes swept around, his vision dyed red as crimson tears squeezed unwilling from his tear ducts. He saw Lindri then, the younger, more potent blank having fallen onto his back, convulsing and seizing against the wall, blood practically spurting from his nose and eyes, his mouth open in a horrifically silent scream. Finally, that scream found its voice, filling the room with the terrible sound of an agonized death. As Lindri finally succumbed to the assailing force, his voice screeching into a higher and higher pitch until, at last, his entire head burst like a squeezed grape, showering Gorbin in bloody chunks and skull fragments. Gorbin himself knew that he was not far behind, his being stretched and pulled taut like a ship's windsail attempting to hold fast in the face of a hurricane.
You know, I was just thinking about how Lindri was just screaming, and it's taking me back to Game of Thrones. It's taking me back to the Viper versus the Mountain, and you know, when the Mountain started squashing in the Viper's skull, and you know, it popped his eyes, and you know, you could hear it, that popping sound, and then you'd hear the Viper screaming out for help. Or well, he wasn't screaming for help, he was just screaming out in pain. And then, you know, he just kept on squeezing and squeezing until, you know, he squashed in the head. Yeah, that's what I'm imagining right now. Lendry's, he was screaming, and then, dead. Yeah. Look, his death was painful, but at least he died. What's going to happen to Gorbin? What's going to happen to other people? You know, you'd wish you died too. You'd wish you died.
Lindri's entire mast in this metaphor had been torn away, but for Gorbin, something different and rare occurred. Gorbin's mast, his body, held strong. Strong enough so that it was Gorbin's sail itself which tore apart. That anti-psyker film which had subliminated deadness and stillness into his very soul, controlled and dictated his entire life. The moment it did, he was freed from the pressure, the unmasterable psychic veil speeding past him like a hot breeze, allowing him to drop to his knees, shoulders sagging, heaving as he panted. Gorbin's bloody eyes blinked, his red tears added to by the stream coming from his nose and mouth. The combination of fluids dripping from his chin as he sagged against the sudden weakness and euphoria which were flooding his body and mind.
I discussed about this last week when I first reacted to this video. This reminds me of the Tranquil from Dragon Age. I don't know if you guys have played the game Dragon Age 1, Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition. There are a group of people called Tranquil. The Tranquil are mages that have been stripped of their magical affinity. They were stripped away of their magical affinity because they were susceptible to manipulation from demons, essentially. And for them to be protected and for the greater society to be protected, their magical affinity would have to be ripped from them so that they would not be possessed by demons. And by doing so, the Tranquil are emotionless, calm, calculating human beings. And if you were to give them back their magical affinity, you could say that they are a whole human being once more. So I would also see the blanks in this Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K in the same light, where the blanks have this aura around them that prevents them to fully experience what it means to be a human being. If you take that away from them, that aura of blankness, then they would become a fully fledged, emotion-driven human being. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of when I think about the blanks. I think of them similar to the Tranquil, in terms of their emotions being suppressed. And once that power that's been suppressing their emotions or keeping their emotions in check has been released, then they come into their full selves. Yeah, it's quite interesting though.
He knew he must have gone insane as rasping chuckles began to blurt and bubble from his lips. But the former blank could not help himself, suddenly alleviated of his own depressive aura. Life, specifically his life, had been pain, and he had never even known it until now. Never had another state of being to compare it to. But now that he was free, emotions of color, of vibrancy, of ecstasy flowed through him like a hit of crystal airsats, lighting him up, making him feel warmth without heat, happiness without reason.
Our chains are broken.
Even the sight of the other dead blank, headless and splayed across the ground in a gore-slicked ruin, could not dampen the sudden manic rush that Gorbin was now feeling. However, the sound of the voice which suddenly appeared within his head did succeed in chilling his blood to an atrocious calm. Special. You are special. Rasped the alien sound within his mind. He felt a cold sweat breaking over his body as he tried to stand, but his limbs felt limp, lacking all coordination, and he could do little better than flop back from his knees, his back striking the wall behind him as he pulled his bleeding eyes forward. The voice had come from within him, but he still knew where to look. Across from him still adhered to the wall by chains which clung to the rear, untouched portions of the previously sealed sarcophagus, was the being known as the Heresiarch of Sikaris. It was a featureless mannequin of flesh, held entirely nude as it hung limply from its iron and barbed constraints, nearly clothed by virtue of the raw amount of shackles which held it. The creature was sexless, yet vaguely masculine, its only visible orifices being those which formed under its nostrils, with all else, including its eyes and mouth, coated in a smooth layer of unbroken skin. The doomed thing was hairless, its skin unmarred by scar, bruise, ink, or burn, though it did seem emaciated and frail.
You know, this Heresiarch that AFanWithTooMuchTime is describing reminds me of the aliens that we see in those conspiracy channel, shows, like on History Channel, when I don't know if they still do. I haven't watched History Channel in years, but on History Channel, they used to have those ancient aliens documentaries, or they had alien documentaries on what aliens would look like and all that stuff, and then they would give us depictions of how aliens looked like, and those that were captured and taken to Area 51 in America. Everything that AFanWithTooMuchTime is saying in describing the Heresiarch kind of sounds exactly like those aliens. But of course they do have their eyes open, and I think they have a mouth, but they seem sexless. They have this gray skin, this gray soft skin, and they have this not really physically built, but slender looking bodies, and with bald head, like they don't have any hair or anything like that. Yeah, he's describing these types of aliens that we see in those documentaries, for ancient aliens, or these alien hypothesis types of documentaries on History Channel or National Geographic. Yeah, well, when I used to watch them, and that was years back. That was years back. I don't know what do they show nowadays. What type of aliens do they show in their Ancient Aliens documentaries or National Geographic documentaries? I'm not sure what type of aliens now they're showing. But yeah, the explanation here is just taking me back to those aliens.
Its arms stick thin, its chest almost concave save where its gently rising and falling ribs pushed back against its white skin. Just right. Just right. And so special. Creaked its psychic voice, and Gorbin shook his head, numb hands fumbling for his meltagun, unworried as to what damage he would do to his hands if he took it up again.
Kill yourself. Kill yourself.
His fingers brushed the hot grip, only for the gun to spin away across the room as though he had kicked it. He tried to withdraw his hand, but found it frozen, locked on its reaching posture by a growing conflict swelling within his will, his very soul. It had not been seconds since the moment he was freed from his previous condition, the doors of his spirit unbarred, and already something had slithered within. He grit iron-tasting teeth, groaning as he tried to pull his hand away, but instead it reached down, steadying him as he lost control of his legs and then spine. His possessed arm pushed off the floor, and his legs stood without his permission, lifting him from the ground.
A puppet on strings.
No, I won't serve. Gorbin pushed past ruddy lips, his breath, his words, acting as a desperate prayer and not merely a declaration of his intent, as his body was piloted by the malign psyker, stepping closer and closer until the former blank was fully within the reach of the slumped, featureless form of the heretic. Hush. You serve the God Emperor of mankind. Yes. He is your lord, yes. The voice asked him. All the while, Gorbin's body continued to act against his desires, moving jerkily but with an uncanny coordination as he reached down and began to unbuckle the gauntlet on his right forearm, wincing as his hands acted callously, ignoring the burns which coated his palms and fingers. Soon, his hand was free and bare to the air, stinging and aching deeply, especially now that he could see the burnished flesh and the damage his earlier melta discharge had done to him. I live to serve him, the guard babbled, true tears joining the bloody ones in his eyes, stinging as salt mingled with blood. Good. I am the same, said the
Yeah, you are.
Horrible voice. Really? You believe in the Emperor? Said the desperate, defeated man as he raised his now bare palm and reached for the mannequin of flesh before him, pressing his palm against the heretic's pale skin.
You know, the soundtrack we're hearing right now is the theme soundtrack for Sister Rojulia. Do you guys remember Sister Rojulia? Do you remember when she had her final speeches, when she was saying her final words to Jedi Knight or Jedi Master Shakti before they had their final battle? Yeah, this is her theme song. This is her theme music. I just remember Sister Rojulia. Anytime AFanWithTooMuchTime plays this particular soundtrack, I just remember Sister Rojulia. Yes,
I serve them all, each and every god, every true god.
The five-fingered hand of the tenfold path.
What else could be asked of the first follower of the tenfold path? The voice asked. Gorbin did not understand. However, he did feel a great deal. His palm hurt terribly as he pressed it against the cold skin of the man before him, his own burned and tanned skin now flush against its chest. And then he felt a different something, an odd something. It was difficult for him to describe the sensations as his flesh quivered and merged with that of the creature before him. He watched, eyes bulging in his skull as his skin melted into the flesh of the heretic, watching the patches of burnt skin moving off of his own palm and hand, and splaying out across the chest of the heresiarch like maligned markings of heretical intent. He tried to pull away as hard as he could, but his body had been reduced to a mere puppet, a marionette, his strings masterfully manipulated by an old, skilled hand. A hand which had been rejected by the highest of the high heretics. A hand which belonged to one reviled by all, and yet appealing to only the greatest powers. The five-fingered hand of the tenfold path. But that creature took much more than burnt skin into its limp, nearly inert body. Gorbin coughed and choked, sinew and vein flowing beneath the skin, reinforcing the weakened meat and bone of the arch-heretic, transfusing it with vital blood and substance like a profound leech, having reached the pinnacle of its evolution.
You know, this is taking me back to Dragon Ball Z. Cell. Do you guys remember Cell? With his tail and how he would just, you know, penetrate someone with his tail and then start sucking up their entire existence, essentially, and leave only clothes behind. Yeah, this is taking me back to Cell. And even when Cell's tail evolved into some sort of vacuum suction cup type of thing, where he doesn't, you know, he doesn't penetrate you anymore and suck it up like that, but he just sucks you whole once. You know, you just hear people screaming and being sucked up by Cell into his tail. Yeah, it's taking me back there. And Cell was not... He was a scary character. He was a scary character. And you would just hear people screaming as they were slowly being sucked away. That's what's happening here to Gorbin. He's slowly being absorbed by, the Hirisirak. Oh, poor guy. You should have killed yourself. You should have killed yourself. Oh well. Too late now.
Gorbin could feel his insides being churned and drained, vitamins being removed, organs being torn and reused. All of it entering and being exchanged from the ruined flesh within the criminal which was controlling him. It felt almost like dying, and yet the former Blank could feel that he was not dead, nor coming even close to the edge of oblivion. The thing before him was not merely stealing from him, it was stealing him himself, taking from him and yet allowing Gorbin to remain, not merely within the ruined body it was slowly exchanging, but enabling him to exist within the stolen flesh itself. He could feel himself, his blood, his nerves, even his bones, driving up, exchanging and moving themselves particle by particle, until they were within the creature's body, within his form, now commingled in a way that was beyond violating. Gorbin whimpered a wordless plea for mercy, for a cessation of the horrific transplant, but the voice in his clouding mind only tutted. I am not destroying you, Gorbin, it said in his own voice, even their gray matter beginning to mingle, one mind fusing into the other. I am saving us both, said the voice that would become him, his eyes still wide as they drifted off of his face, streaming down his chin, over his chest and arm, and into the new, bound body. Its limbs thickened with muscle and fat, teeth filling the widening maw of its contorting face. Eyes blinking open within the previously blank, smooth skin of the damned entity they had attempted to imprison. And more matter, from organs to spirit stuff, drifted between them, making the reduced arch-heretic whole again, until at last, all that stood in Gorbin's clothes was a faceless, soulless mannequin. And behind Gorbin's old eyes, his screaming soul joined the cacophony of the others this biomancer had taken within the breadth of his long life, most now entirely enslaved to his original will. The living, lifeless thing that had once been Gorbin's body shuddered, eyeless, thin and withering, even before the connection between it and the chest of the heretic was severed, the new mannequin slumping backwards and down onto its knees, leaving a man who looked suspiciously like Gorbin hanging upon the half-destroyed, molten sarcophagus. Gently, gradually, the fingers on this new man twitched and then wiggled. Gorbin's pale tan eyes suddenly coloring in with an alien violet. His facial structure altering, cheekbones rising, face stretching until he looked entirely new and different. The only aspect of his appearance which remained fixed being his new brown hair. With great care, he began to slide his body around even more, always moving within his own skin, as he began to patiently slip the restraints which held him. Limbs fattening in places and thinning in others to create the leverage he would need to slip free.
You know, Tawila should have added this to his design of the cells, where they would be jettisoned into space should the security guards be killed. You know, as soon as the security guards are dead, jettisoned into space. No questions asked, nothing. You know, let that occupant or that inmate die in deep space and never to be seen ever again. Really. Tawala should have added that to his security blocks, where really if any of these dangerous, powerful psychers or heretics were to try to escape, you know, there would be no negotiation. There would be no needing for extra security to go and put down this dangerous opponent. You just eject that entire block into space. Let them die in cold space. Oh well.
Clank, clank, clank. He addressed every shackle with personal care, shedding them one by one until at last his newly revitalized body lowered itself to the ground, bare, printless toes sliding across the cold, polished stone floor. He cocked his head to the right, eliciting a small torrent of crackling pops from his vertebrae, and then swung his hips to the left, producing a similar effect from his spine and other joints. He raised his arms up into the air, stretching and popping dramatically as he spread the limbs out like featherless wings. He then crossed them over his chest, forming a twisted rendition of the Aquila by interlocking his thumbs, though his rendition also splayed his fingers, creating less of a bird shape between his digits and more something resembling a 10-spoked wheel. The forming of the gesture across his chest made his lips tug back across his teeth in a widening, stretched grin. A grin which was so tight and spread that it nearly seemed his skin would split as his head tilted up to smile into the ceiling. The heresiarch of Sikaris, the most reviled and hunted heretic of the modern times of the Eye, was free at last. He stepped forward, heels scraping the smooth cold flooring in an odd, irregular shuffle, until he was standing much nearer to the ruin that had once been the blank known as Lindri. Sparing the dead blank no consideration, he reached down and carefully stripped the headless body, ignoring his unused melt-a-gun. The heretic instead took the former guard's black pants and cream-colored undershirt specifically.
He doesn't need a melt-a-gun. He definitely doesn't need one.
He slid them on, growing a little taller and lankier to fit perfectly within the pilfered clothing, grinning at the gods all the while. Then, as if to herald his return, the doors beside him hissed and split open, another guard running inside, almost directly into him. The man was speaking before he even fully entered the room, for which the heresiarch was grateful. "Hey, are you two still alive? Block purge has been..." He got no further, his eyes widening as the tall form of the heresiarch was registered into his brain. The man was a blunt, not a blank, and though his reflexes were honed to a...
What is the difference between a blunt and a blank? I think I'll have to search that up. Yeah, I did write that down here, but I didn't research on it. But yeah, I'll figure it out. Don't worry, guys. I'll figure it out.
Professional edge. The heretic before him moved on the speed of prophecy, affording his victim no chance to react with anything more pronounced than a spike of fear before their brief contest was over. The heresiarch's long-fingered hand snapped out, smoothly sliding into the speaking man's open mouth and grasping his tongue tightly. With a flick of his index finger, the arch-heretic used his sharpened fingernail to cut a shallow circle and design into the wet flesh he now gripped.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, this poor man.
His tremendous psychic might flowing in behind it. It all happened so fast, the man did not even have time to breathe out before it was done. His last exhalation manifesting as a distorting scream of mortal peril as the heresiarch pulled out his tongue, his teeth, his throat, stomach, and bones, along with all his pink, worming innards through the blunt's mouth. The unlucky guard did not die, however, as he was elongated and remade, coming a gory, bony whip of moaning sinew and shuddering organs.
And this is why Lendry is lucky. He died. Because he would have become a weapon, or he would have been absorbed like, what's his name again? Gorbin. Yeah. So he's lucky. Yes, his death was painful, but it happened and it was over. He didn't have to feel pain ever again. He's gone. But these guys,
which connected to the wrist of its new master, coiling there as it continued to warp and alter into a weapon of punitive design. He did not take this one's soul, nor did he spare him his suffering. Left standing in the blunt guard's place, if only briefly, was the hollow, boneless husk of the man's now repurposed body. Literally left as little more than skin, cartilage, hair, and the armor and clothes which enwreathed them. The monster's right hand now occupied by the slithering wet mass of his new living whip. The heretic reached out with his left hand, grabbing and crumpling the hollow face of the still standing husk between his fingers, before releasing its form from his psychic stilts, allowing it to finally attempt to collapse. Gravity reasserted itself over what had previously been the guard's body. Protective uniform now falling to the ground as the arch-heretic callously shook the perfectly preserved human skin that had been left in the wake of his attack, doing so until all that remained was the husk and nothing more. Then, filling it with his power once again, he pulled the skin back and spun it around his shoulders.
Like, AFanWithTooMuchTime, you actually sat there and you were like, you know what? This character needs to be special. You know, he needs to do things that no other character has ever done in Star Wars versus Warhammer 40K. He needs to be special. He needs to be remembered. And you succeeded. I'm going to remember this person. He has to go. He has to go. Tarweiler and the heresiarch have to go. Oh gosh. And how did Tarweiler capture this person? How? Someone so powerful. Someone who can do this. How? Why? Why did you capture him? What do you want from him? You should have killed him.
The flesh opening and remodeling its shape to fit his design. The door sought to close, but his now free left hand reached out and paused it, grasping its edge. The DNA scanners mounted into the frame of the device went off right away. Green bars of deciphering light quickly sliding over the heretic's exiting body, prepared to slam shut and crush him into two halves the instant it detected his departure. But
you know, Kubik, this image is reminding me of Prototype, the game Prototype or Prototype 2. If you guys have played that game, then, you know, you can actually see. Because in Prototype, you know, you as the character player, you're able to absorb other human beings into your body and use their organic flesh as a weapon, you know, either to give you super strength or give you super speed or create some sort of weapon. You know, you need to absorb other biological beings and use their energy or flesh to create weapons, armor to protect you, or weapons to fight with. Yeah, essentially that's what the Heresiarch has done here. He's repurposed human beings for his own benefit, making a cape, making some sort of whip, and absorbing another human being to give his body vitality. Ugh.
Those scanners did not find him. Instead, reading and identifying the still living skin of Corporal Lachasse and allowing him to pass unbothered. And so it was that the Heresiarch exited the cell, bare feet and toes splaying over the ground he stepped on, wearing a high-collared cloak of dark, freshly harvested human skin, which trailed behind him in an unnatural, unfelt wind. The forlorn of Lorgar, the heretic among heretics, the first prophet of the tenfold path, had at last reached the lands of prophecy. And the great power which had freed him, the blinding light of the ever-chosen, had not gone unnoticed or unseen, nor was...
Well done, Anakin. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done. You've doomed us all.
he the only one within this place to have benefited from its intervention. A fact which was made plain the instant he exited his confinement and entered the prison hallway. Gunfire, screams, and the sounds of things that were both less and far more than human rang like dirges through the cramped and darkened spaces of the Weiler prison. It was like sweet holiday music, nostalgic and well-omened, particularly for a creature such as he. The sound of clanking footsteps turned his head to the left, just in time to see a squad of additional guards, all similar to the man who had become his whip, just as they rounded a bend and came into sight of him.
Kill yourselves. Kill yourselves.
He smiled at them, the weapon in his hand quivering with sudden, violent anticipation. The dance began as they opened fire, gory sinews snapping even faster than the booming expulsions of the shotguns they used against him. The man, dressed in human flesh, cavorted on psychic streams so strange, he did not merely seem to dodge the shots sent for him, but to impossibly flicker around them, moving to the right and to the left, back and forth, laughing and laughing as his weapon whipped to and fro. Heads were clipped from shoulders, eyes filled with gouging bones, brains and stomachs and spleens punctured in spite of ceramite protection. And through it all, the arch-heretic was in ecstasy. Not one of the doomed guards ran for their lives. Not one was unprepared to give everything in their attempt to contain him. Wonderful! He sang to them as they danced and died. You are all so wonderful! Such faith! Such duty! Oh gods, how it fills me! The man crowed through a throat which had spoken in screams for months. Duty is a lie we realize only through passion, said the Psyker, snapping his whip through the eye of a blunt and impaling the thigh of another. Through passion, we wage our wars! He continued, yanking back, the whip growing hooked spars and barbs, anchoring itself into the leg of the screaming, struck soldier, ripping his entire body up off his feet and through the bursting skull of his compatriot before being slammed into the wall behind the heretic in the process.
At least you guys are dead. It could have been worse. It could have been worse.
Through our wars, we gain faith! He growled victoriously, ripping the whip forward again, this time tearing the anchored soldier's entire leg free at the thigh, as he threw the dismembered limb into the growing path of a shotgun blast, cutting a shielding silhouette through the rain of lethal pellets, one which he slid through as he continued his cavorting movements. And it is through our faith that we attain victory! He declared, reeling back his whip-bearing fist as he reached forward with his free hand, opening it into a claw as the last soldier was suddenly sucked through the air, halting once her throat was between his powerful fingers, gripping her tightly. She was the last guard, and though there was...
Kill yourself. I'm going to be saying this to each and every single guard that fights against this guy. Please, just do it. Just kill yourself. You know, if you have a grenade, set it off right there, right next to you. You know, hopefully it can take him out as well. But just make sure you kill yourself. You don't want to become a weapon or some clothing that this man is going to wear, or this heretic is going to wear. You just don't want to be that.
Much fear in her. There was also the frenzy of combat, and one-handed, she leveraged up her shotgun and pressed it into his chest, pulling the trigger. Her eyes widened as nothing happened, her weapon clicking but not firing. Jammed! The heresiarch brought his face closer to her, and he tightened his grip, his painful smile now only inches from her grimace. And through victory, our chains are broken. He whispered to her through the teeth of his daemon's grin, his hands squeezing tighter and tighter. The blunt woman dropped her weapon, gasping and choking, scrabbling with armored fingers against his hand. But she could not touch him. Try as she might, the soldier's clawing and pounding fists met with a barrier of solid air with each attempt. Unable to do anything but glare into the creature's eyes, it smiled into her final moments. When she died at last, her eyes rolling up as death throes rattled through her, the man-shaped monster let her drop to the floor in a heap. It shuddered in pleasurable exultation, standing amidst the bodies it had created, taking a moment to savor its freedom, tasting the rewards of his faith, crossing one hand over his heart, splaying out his 5 digits as he did. Chaos abides no chains. Chaos only reigns.
Don't come looking for salvation if you're drowning in death. I watch them break, divide the rich and the private and the God. The order, the structure of lies.
Yes, guys, that is it with Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K special episode. Our chains are broken, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. Wow, the tenfold path, the five-fingered hand, the Heresiarch of Sikaris. Yeah, this guy has to go. He has to go. Anakin. This is your fault. You and Iskander have to deal with this thing. I don't know how, I don't know when, but you guys have to deal with it. Because there's no one else here who can deal with it. Tarweiler, of course, he's on Axum. He's not going to be on his ship anytime soon. And I don't know if Inquisitor Udama and her custodian are going to deal with it. You know, someone has to take responsibility for letting this monster roam around free. So Anakin, you gotta do something. You gotta do something. Use your lightsaber, cut down this entity, and then jettison its remains into space. Yeah, that's what you gotta do. That's what you gotta do. He's just too dangerous. What he's able to do to human bodies, you know, either absorb them or use them as weapons or as clothing, like, it's just so disturbing, really. And I thought Tarweiler was one of the scariest characters in Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, but no, he's amateur compared to this guy. He's amateur. You know, Tarweiler does have crazy plans, and you know how he experiments on people, and how he's able to torture people and use them as his slaves or drones, I should say. Yeah, it is very frightening, it is very scary, but really, the Heresiarch is on another level. He is on another level. He has to go. He has to go, either by a Jedi's hand or by someone in the Imperium of Man, someone who's powerful enough to take him on, but he has to go. Or Tarweiler's ship has to blow up. That's how serious this is. This guy has got to go, guys. Really. And Tarweiler should have made a security measure where, should anything happen in one of these security blocks, it has to be jettisoned into space. It has to be. Because you can't keep such dangerous people on board and think that everything's going to be alright. No. No. Too powerful, too scary. He has to go. Oh, guys, yeah, that's it with the special episode. But since it's a special episode, hopefully we'll never see him again, you know. But if we do, please, someone take him out. But yeah, if you guys want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And hopefully this video is going to be posted. Hopefully there's no lagging of the audio and the video. Hopefully it's synced properly. And yeah, I'll be here again to watch episode 40 of Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K. Wondering whether we're going to continue on with the space battle, or are we heading back to Axum, or any of the other battlefronts that have opened up in the galaxy. We'll just have to wait and see with episode 40. And until then, guys, that's it. Bye-bye.